Welcome back to Secret Weapons, and today we are taking a look at the FLWR by 29 Pedals. I'm excited to be doing this video today for two main reasons. Reason number one is the FLWR just sounds damn good. It's an easy video to make because I find this to be a really fun and compelling overdrive. And reason two is because it's an overdrive. I've been a big fan of 29 Pedals for a long time. I was a really early adopter of the Una. I really loved putting together that stereo WAMP video. And I'm so glad to be covering a pedal from Jesse and 29 Pedals that is easy to explain. If you've been around for a while, you know and are familiar with things like the WAMP and the Una, an input line driver and kind of like an output line driver. They're incredibly useful tools. They're incredibly nuanced, but not overly subtle in a lot of ways, especially in the world of things like buffers and line drivers. However, it still does take a little bit of doing to kind of explain to somebody not only what something like the Una does, but why it would be beneficial in their rig potentially. This is not like that. This is an overdrive with a very distinct and specific sound, and that's pretty easy to kind of showcase. It's either for you or it's not, but the purposes behind it are very straightforward because it's an overdrive. But that actually kind of builds into my first real point here, which is I love that this is not just another overdrive. I mean, it is in the grand scheme of like more drives in the world, but this is not a direct take on something. This is not a blues breaker lineage pedal, a tube screamer lineage pedal, a rat, a big muff, a fuzz face, or anything like that. This is its own very unique schematic that Jesse put together with a really, really kind of compelling and interesting approach to setting your gain staging. And you can see we have 3 switches and 2 knobs on this thing, and they're all very, very small. But the way that you have this is basically set up in 3 sections. You have your gain and level controls, which is going to be basically what we're going to call gain 2. But ahead of that, you have gain 1, which is this shape area controlled by 2 dip switches. One is numeric and one is alphabetical. So 1, 2, 3 and ABC. 1, 2, 3 is going to be the kind of like min-max of the amount of gain available in gain stage 1. And then shape is going to be kind of supplemental gain amount as well as different EQ curves. So like B will be low gain and very flat response, just your exact sound with clipping. C will be a kind of like trebly bright setting, medium gain, something a little bit more articulate and math rocky. And then A is going to be the most shaped in terms of EQ scooping and curving and everything. More mid-range contouring happening, and also the highest gain setting within that alphabetical side. On the numeric side, you have 3, 2, and 1. 3 being your kind of like low gain bandwidth, 2 being your higher gain, kind of maximum potential gain on the pedal, and then 1 being that same maximum gain, but with a serious low-pass filter applied to it for dark, murky, angry, almost broken amp jazz tones is kind of how I tend to think of it. And then off to the side, you have a clipping diode switch over here, wherein you have no clipping diodes or 2 different sets. And it's a totally modular piece of the pedal, which means you can kind of mix and match your diodes to the kind of gain staging you're putting together in the pedal as a whole unit, which is really interesting because you can kind of like set your EQ and gain amounts to exactly where you want them, and then kind of like finish it off, add some kind of like special sauce to it with either no clipping diodes or diodes that kind of impart a little bit more compression or a little bit more articulation, that kind of thing. It's really kind of an interesting approach to drive kind of shaping and gain staging, which is a nice way to kind of get out of your kind of rut of setting an overdrive the way that you would always set it, kind of like an all knobs at noon as a default kind of thing, which I think a lot of us are guilty of, myself included. And then once you have all that fine-tuned, you have that gain stage 2, where you have your gain control, which has, even at low settings, an incredibly wide sweep, and a level control, which I think can be pushed for up to 42 decibels of gain. I'll put it on the screen if I'm wrong about that, but I think so. This thing gets real loud, and it's surprisingly versatile for not having kind of a dynamic EQ curve or anything like that. For being very switch oriented, this thing has a large variety of sounds encased within it, because you have these kind of like interactive pieces that really play against each other very, very effectively. The way that we do our sound samples in this video is by basically starting with that numeric switch, running through it with a flat EQ response, then moving over to that ABC knob, or that ABC switch, and then going back and walking through that 1, 2, 3, and then doing the same thing with the various clipping modes, because you can just kind of see several different roads to a similar but slightly different sound, or a really wide breadth of sounds depending on how you want to set this up. And like I said, it's a unique circuit. It doesn't sound like anything else I've got. It can have that kind of like flat wooden sound that's kind of like in the vague ballpark of the normal channel of the EAE model FET. It can have something really articulate and, like I said, kind of like almost like math rocky, the kind of sound that sounds really at home with like a Telecaster and a Fender amp. But again, it doesn't sound like a Klon. It doesn't sound like a blues breaker. It has a very distinct thing that is all its own, and that may be for you and it may not be. But what I love is it's its own sound. It doesn't sound like everything else I've got, which I find really compelling. So I think that's about all I have to say on the matter here. The FLWR is its own thing. It's very fun. It's amazing color, an amazing color. Like, we know that 29 doesn't miss on colors, but the streak continues. So let's go to our pedal board and kind of start walking through some sound samples. So as always, I want to talk through our signal chain before we jump into our sound samples. I am playing my Jennings Voyager Deluxe with Lambertone's Crema pickups in it into the 29 pedals FLWR directly in. I'm skipping kind of all of my other gain stages for the purposes of this video. From there, we go to a volume pedal, the Hologram Electronics Microcosm, the Timeline, and the BigSky by Strymon. And then we are going to the Neural Quad Cortex, which is basically just running amplifiers and a slight master EQ across everything. We're running a pair of AC30s in the Quad Cortex. The guitar directly through everything into the Timeline set with a slightly subtle analog delay, and the BigSky with a nice small plate reverb sounds like this. So because this FLWR takes a very different approach to gain shaping than a lot of overdrives we tend to cover, with that kind of shape 2 parameter control, that clipping control, and the gain and level controls, we're going to go ahead and set things as flat and simple as possible, and then start with the numeric shape toggle, then step through to the alphabetic shape toggle, and then wrap things up with that clipping control. We'll mess with gain and level as we kind of go throughout, just so that you're kind of like covering the full gamut appropriately. But yeah, we're going to break it up into sections. So we have gain and level right about noon right now. We have shape toggle set to B, which is going to be low gain and very flat. And then our clipping is completely out. We are starting things off in mode 3, which is going to be the minimum amount of total gain in that first gain stage. So this thing can get incredibly loud. There's a lot of volume available with that level control. Let's start by taking that gain all the way down to 0. So you can see, even with that kind of like lower gain setting, this thing starts to break up really quickly. And as you kind of hit those like maximum gain levels, it can get really, really big. Okay, so let's jump down to number 2 here, which is going to step that first gain stage up to the maximum amount of total gain available. So we'll bring that gain control over here down. We'll bring that level back up to noon, so we're getting kind of close to unity. And now let's step to gain setting 2. And again, we are still on shape B here, which is going to be the lowest gain setting for that portion of this gain stage because it's the flattest. I mean, it's not low gain because of that. It's low gain and it's the flattest, and we're on it because it's flat. Right about noon right now. I really love all the like harmonic content in there. You can kind of lose some articulation with more complicated chords on this kind of thing. But I like the texture that's in there, especially if you do something like, let me save my analog delay sound really quick. Let's bank up to one of my kind of like swell modes I really like on the timeline. I think this kind of thing is really, really compelling and interesting. Like dialing up some really like aggressive, crazy drive like that with a lot of like harmonic content. You take something super clean. Like that's all well and good. But then you bring something like this. And again, clean. And something with some like real like hair. And this one obviously gets truly unhinged if you max it out. Okay, and jumping down to number 1 on this thing is going to be the same gain staging as 2, so the kind of like higher gain staging, but with a significant amount of low-pass filtering applied, so it's going to get really dark. What I love that for is kind of like the high up neck stuff. Okay, let's take a look at the second part of that shape control. Let's take a look at those letters. So we are in B right now, which is going to be the flattest low gain setting. If we go down to A, it's the most shaped, so kind of the most mid-range contouring, and it's going to be higher gain. And then kind of the high gain setting of the 3 of those. And then if you go up to the C position, it's going to be medium gain, but it's also going to be a lot brighter and a lot more articulate, which can be incredibly useful on this thing. So we're in low gain mode on the numbers right now. We're going to go ahead and take this guy up to the medium gain with a lot more treble. And this is where you can get like a really great kind of like articulate, bright, like medium overdrive kind of sound. And keeping that level nice and, or the gain level nice and low right there. Let's go ahead and step through a couple of these. So we're in medium gain now. Let's take it to that higher gain clipping setting on shape. take that gain all the way to 0 on that. I love that. 0 gain on that sounds amazing. And then let's jump to that low pass thing. Kind of let the highs and the lows, like let the brightness and the low passer just kind of fight it out. There's a really great mellow tone to be found in there. If you go back to that B setting, you can kind of feel like you're losing some of that with that one position, with that low pass, can get a little muddy if you don't want that kind of broken jazzy sound. And you don't lose that darkness when you kick up to that C position, but you do get a little bit different character of it. Something that I think works a little bit better, especially with humbuckers like we're playing right now, that just gives it a little bit more character and something a little bit more in those kind of high mids poking through. Okay, and let's jump on down to A. So this is going to be the highest gain setting on that shape control for the alphabetical stuff. And then we'll walk through, again, the shape controls down here. So for context, let's start at B. We're on our low gain setting on 3. Level and gain. Let's go level, gain a little bit low. Level nice and even. So that's low gain, flat low gain, medium gain bright, and then high gain super shaped. Okay, let's take that gain all the way down to 0. Hear how that sounds. And then let's roll that volume down a little bit. and just see how brutal that gets when, again, we're still on 3, so we're still on the kind of like lower gain setting stages here. Take that volume back down to noonish. And now let's jump to kind of our 2 high gain stages on that shape control. Even with gain at 0, when you've got those both set super high like that. And then the dark setting. Stay on B. There's a lot of volume on top of this pedal. I believe that the level control on this thing by itself offers up about 45 decibels. Okay, let's jump back up to C. We'll roll our tone back on our guitar just a little bit. Okay, so let's take a look at these clipping diodes. We've set ourselves back up to be kind of like a nice, bright, medium gain overdrive sound. Because the clipping mode, the different clipping diode options on this thing, obviously are not going to do a whole lot if you aren't clipping anything. So we wanted to make sure that we were setting our gain staging to be kind of big enough, but with enough articulation, hence being in C and the lower gain setting over there, so that we can, here we go, so that we can really hear how those clipping diodes affect the way your guitar breaks up and everything. So we've been in no clipping diodes this entire time. So let's jump up to 1. Here, we'll kill our delay and reverb because this is kind of a more nuanced piece of this puzzle. So for my money, I think that 2 offers a cool kind of like stiffness that probably works if you're doing that really dark. It almost makes it sound even more like woody. Like this would be a great like super dark baritone sound. But conversely, I like how number 1 opens up at higher gain stages. So you've got like... I think there's a little bit of a tiny bit of headroom and saturation that comes in with that one clipping that I really like.